Chapter 14. The Tattooed Juggler. Pete's back was turned toward the baboon as the animal jumped out to the two boys. But Hook saw the beast, let out a scream, and dashed off. "Run, Pete, run!" Ricky shouted frantically. As the baboon raised its front paws and opened its mouth, the tattooed man leaped from the crowd and streaked toward the uncaged animal. Reaching down, he grabbed the beast's short tail and whirled him around, just as the baboon lunged at Pete, teeth bared. "Look out!" Ricky pleaded. At this moment, Mike rushed forward with a long pole and forced the beast back into the cage. "Hurry!" cried Ricky. "Hooray for Flippin and Mike!" the human skeleton applauded. The onlookers all talked at once, thankful for the narrow escape. They knew the power of the mean baboon. As Pete shook hands with his rescuers, thanking them, Kit introduced the tattooed man as Flippin, the best juggler in the Sunshine Circus. "Thank you," said Pete, who was still trembling from the shock. "Thank you both." "Sure, and it was a pleasure," Mike said modestly. Then he shook his head. "Begorra, I can't figure out how the baboon's cage got unlocked." Pete looked at Kit. Could the cage have been unlocked on purpose? Poor Peppo, one thing after another was going wrong for him. When the excitement died down, Ricky said to the tattooed man, "How did you get all these pictures on you, Flippin?" "Come over to my tent and I'll tell you all about it," the fellow invited. The three boys picked up their new canes, which had been dropped during the scuffle, and followed the performer. In front of his tent were several camp chairs. "Sit down here, boys," he said, stripping off his blue denim shirt. "Crickets!" Pete cried, gazing at the man in astonishment. "I've never seen so many tattoos." Grinning, Flippin threw out his chest. Completely covering it was a great American eagle. The bird's head was tattooed clear up to Flippin's neck, and when the juggler swallowed, it looked as if the eagle was moving its head. The boys laughed, and Kit said, "Tell him about the eagle, Flip." The juggler explained that many years before he had been a sailor. One time, while he was in Singapore, he had felt very lonesome for the United States. "So I had a man there tattoo the American eagle on me," he said with a smile. "It's nifty," Ricky said in admiration. "Wait till you see the picture on his back," Kit remarked. Flippin turned around quickly. Across his back was tattooed a beautiful blue and red lion, standing on its hind legs. The animal's claws were bared as if to strike. "Gee," Pete exclaimed, "he sure does look fierce." The boy looked at it closely. "Isn't that the lion England uses as an emblem?" "Yes," said Flippin. "My mother was English, so I had the British lion tattooed on me in honor of her country." "Now show him your trick with the sailboats," Kit said with a chuckle. "Sailboats?" Ricky asked excitedly. "Watch him move," the juggler said with a laugh. He turned to face the boys again and placed the palms of his hands back of his neck. On his biceps were tattooed two pretty schooners in full sail. Flippin wiggled his muscles, and the sails actually looked as though they were being rippled by a heavy wind. "Yikes!" Ricky cried in astonishment. Then, thinking what fun it might be, he asked Flippin about having his arms tattooed. The man shook his head. "Don't ever do it, son. You know they never come off. Once put on, they're a part of you for the rest of your life, and sometimes you get mighty tired of being all marked up." He laid a hand on the boy's shoulder. "If you want to play tattoo man, have someone paint pictures on your arms and chest, but be sure they'll wash off easily." Flippin now took Ricky's cane, spun it in the air, and caught it neatly. "You might try this trick too," he said, reaching for Pete's and Kit's canes. Deftly he juggled the 3 sticks. They twisted and turned in the air as Flippin tossed them like lightning from one hand to the other. "That's keen," Pete declared. As he looked up to watch a particularly high throw, he noticed a big white bird directly overhead. "Look, there's Buzzy," he shouted. "I wonder if he's hunting for us." There was a loud flapping of wings and the crane swooped down. "Hey, watch out, Flippin!" Kit cried. But it was too late. Buzzy zoomed low over Flippin's head and neatly grasped one of the canes in midair. Come back with that," Pete cried, but the mischievous bird headed off in the direction of Miss Sally's house. Laughing, Flippin continued to juggle the 2 remaining sticks with one hand for a few moments, then tossed them to Pete and Ricky. As the boys were about to leave, Pete suddenly remembered why he had come to the circus grounds. He said to Flippin, "We're trying to find a man who might have stolen Nappy. He was wearing a white shirt with a zigzag blue stripe. Did you happen to see him around here at the time the dog disappeared?" "Why, no, I didn't," the juggler replied. "And it's a shame. Nappy's a fine performer. Kit's probably told you about the tandem act." "No, I hadn't," the circus boy answered, and went on to explain how Josie and Nappy rode a double bicycle and did handstands and other acrobatic tricks on it. "The act was one of our main attractions," Kit said sorrowfully. "That's why Nappy's loss is such a blow to my father." "It's a shame," Pete declared, more determined than ever to track down the dog napper. The boys kept on with their sleuthing until every circus employee had been questioned. Not one of them had seen the suspected man. "He must have sneaked ashore from a boat when everyone on the island was asleep," Kit stated. The Hollister boys were about to say goodbye to their circus friend when they saw Rita, Pam, and Holly, and Sue walking toward them. Upon hearing about the juggler, Sue said, "I want to see him jiggle." The others laughed, and Kit said that maybe the juggler would show her some of his tricks. As they approached his tent, the little girl said, "He is jiggling." "He certainly is," Pete agreed. The jolly performer was dancing a little jig, at the same time tossing 4 blue balls high into the air. "He must have glue on his hands," Holly giggled as they stood and watched. "He never misses." Just then, Flippin stepped underneath one of the blue balls and let it hit his head. It bounced off and sailed high into the air. Then, ping! The ball landed squarely on top of Holly's head. Quickly catching the ball, Flippin laughed. "Oh, I miss once in a while, just like I did then." "You did that on purpose," Rita teased him. "Well, what can I do for you children now?" Flippin said, balancing a ball on the end of his nose. Ricky spoke up. "Would you let us look at all the things you use in a real circus performance?" "Why, sure," Flippin replied. "Come into my tent," he invited, throwing back the flap. Rita and Kit excused themselves, saying they had practicing to do, and left. The Hollisters then followed Flippin inside. Everything in the tent was topsy-turvy. Several open suitcases, containing canes, balls, and fancy hats, stood on the ground. 2 cartons were partly packed with clothes. Off in one corner stood an open, brass-bound trunk. "Say, it looks as if you're moving," Pete observed. Flippin raised his eyebrows. "Perhaps I am." "You mean you're leaving Sunshine Circus, too?" Pam asked a little nervously. The man did not answer. Goodness, the girl thought, worried. Is this nice juggler going to desert the circus like some of the other performers have? She quickly whispered her fears to her brother Pete. The boy gulped and said, "Flippin, you're not going to leave Peppo's circus, are you?" Instead of replying, the juggler walked to the door of the tent and looked out across the circus grounds. Sue ran up to him and tugged at his hand. "Oh, please don't go away," the little girl pleaded. "I want you to stay and bounce balls off my sister's head." This made the juggler chuckle. He turned and lifted Sue high into the air, spun her around a few times, and then sat her down. As he leaned over, an envelope fell from his pocket and landed on the tent floor. Pam bent over to pick it up. She gasped upon seeing the return address on it. "Oh," she cried out, putting her hand to her mouth. "What's the matter? Did it bite you?" Flippin said. Pam did not answer. "What's the matter, sis?" Pete asked. It's the name written in the upper corner," the girl said, pointing. The children crowded close to her. On the envelope was written, "Return to Wizard Circus."